like to just get us organized and share a few important details regarding today's session. First, I'd like everyone in the audience today, if you don't mind, to make sure your mics are muted and your video is turned off. I think that happens automatically, but in case it doesn't, please do that. And this way you'll only see the panelists. We'd also like you to switch to speaker view, which is that toggle icon at the top of in the right-hand corner. That'll allow the person who's speaking to be more visually prominent. So that'll just make it easier for you to track what's going on. In the chat box, we have listed the unlimited gallery link. I don't see it there now. I think Faith's going to do that for us. So you can peruse the artwork of these artists or any of the other artists in the show that you'd like. And the artists in the panel today are capable of sharing their piece during their talks through screen share. So you'll probably be seeing that if they decide to do it so. We'll be recording these sessions and putting the link on PNCA alumni webpage so you can view these discussions after the fact. And finally, if you're having any technical difficulties, use your chat box and Faith or I will try to see if we can solve the problem for you. So yeah, definitely use your chat box for that. On a different but related note, I wanted to also remind everyone that we're still taking nominations for the Laura Russo Distinguished Alumni Award, which will be handed out during the 2021 commencement ceremony. Submission deadline is December 7th, so you still have a little time to do that. We've had so many impactful people who have come through our doors at PNCA. I'm sure you have ideas of folks who would be worthy of this honor. So see the link on PNCA website to nominate someone. Okay, now the program. I want to welcome everyone today to what we hope will be a wonderful opportunity to hear from some PNCA alumni about their unique journeys. 2 weeks ago, the Unlimited 2020 exhibition opened, and this year we had over 80 submissions. I hope you've all taken the time to click on that web link and view the incredible range of creativity. The idea of doing these panel discussions was a way to try to bring the exhibition to life, put some faces to the work, and be inspired by those who continue to develop their creative voice. My name is David Cohen, class of 1983. I'm excited to help facilitate these conversations and create a platform for these artists to share their stories. My experience at PNCA had a profound impact on my life and career pathway, as it has, I know, for many of you in the audience. As we listen to the artists participating in this series, I'm hoping we can get a glimpse into the diversity of expressions and directions that each person's PNCA experience has helped provoke. We've lined up 25 alumni to speak over these 5 weeks, so we're hoping you can tune into the next 2 sessions as well. I believe the same link should be able to get you into each Zoom session. And now the panel. We've got Lisa Brinkman, class of 1993, Tamara English, Ann Haley, class of 2010, Travis Willis, class of 2013, Emma Flick, class of 2019. Thank you all for being here today. As a way of introducing yourself, let's start off with a short story about how you ended up here today. What we'd like you to share, very briefly, is the broad arc of your journey as a creative. Why don't we start with Lisa? Why don't you get us going?
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be here today. The arc of my trajectory in terms of PNCA is kind of like, it was in and out quite a bit. I was born in New York and raised in Chicago. And actually my father's hometown was Portland, Oregon. And he actually attended, I think, his first year at PNCA years ago. But he was an advertising executive, and I eventually moved back to Portland and started up at PNCA actually in 1976. And I left for another creative endeavor. I got married and had my daughter, Carly. So then I returned at the same time frame with you, David. I did my thesis in 1984. Mm-hmm. And just the way that I work in terms of, life experiences, I didn't finish all the credits. So I had to finish up my humanities and the added science credits. So my degree actually is in 1993. So it was kind of like a journey getting my BFA. One of the things that I did when I worked on my thesis was I was working with a lot of handmade papers, and I became very intrigued with how to make them. And I went up to OSAC, Oregon School, or Oregon College of Arts and Crafts, lately, and I learned how to make exotic papers. I learned how to make Japanese papers and also a mate paper and embedded collage forms in them. So I kind of like, all along, I got very fascinated with natural fibers and particularly materials that are of the earth. And that's kind of where I've moved into even more recently. But one of the things that I noticed in terms of this whole trajectory is that pretty much the theme that I worked on in my thesis was a theme of regeneration, cycles of existence, healing, and evolutionary systems was to be developed through personal symbology. And pretty much I'm still working, I'm still kind of circumambulating the same concept. And one of the things that has happened in the course of my career too is I went back to school and got an MA in art therapy, and then did my practicum at Washington County Corrections in a drug and alcohol treatment, and was using art therapy and got very fascinated with actually psychology too, but also Jungian thought and archetypes, which have always been kind of at the foundation of my artwork. And with that foundation, I found that study is very much a part of my process too. So I look to, finding inspiration ideas in terms of what I see in the world, and also looking at the symbolic, metaphoric qualities that come through in that. So in terms of, this, again, I weave in and out of doing different things. The art therapy, I also worked at Edgefield Children's Services and worked with Sandtray quite a bit in my private practice, and went into a private practice. But since that, I've let go of that, and I'm diving into a new form of making art using eco prints, which are contact prints off of plants and then painting on them. And that's my latest work, which I'm actually going to have a show at Buckley Center Gallery that's opening on Monday. But since the campus is not opened, it will be a virtual exhibition. And if you go to my website, it is up, lisabrinkman.com. So I've got little butterflies going on here, and I hope I did that in 3 minutes.
That's good, very good. Thank you, Lisa. Tamara, why don't you go next?
All right, let's try that again. Hi. Hi, everyone. I did just want to say thank you for being here today, and the show is just so amazing. It's just a joy to get to be a part of such a strong group of artworks. So my calling to be an artist has pretty much been there as long as I can remember, and art was the way I played as a child, and I started tracking to become a professional crafts person. I thought I was going to be doing ceramics. I did some fabric design, jewelry making. So I developed all these skills in different areas. And there was a point in my early 20s when I said, that's not exactly it. It's painting. That's my true love. That's where I want to go. So that brought me to PNCA. And that has been what I've been doing in my studio practice ever since, oil paintings. And the surprises for me about the arc of my career have been how much there is a consistency in terms of what my explorations are about, and then in my studio practice, and then how much there is so much changing in the art world in terms of the business aspect. So there's been a lot of learning going on pretty much since I graduated in terms of how things are shifting and changing. And now, especially this year, even more shifts and changes. So there's always a learning process with that. One of the surprises also has been, there were things I said, oh, I don't want to do that in my career. I don't see the point of that. And then now finding that they are exactly what is going to be, how things are going to be sustained. So earlier this year, for instance, I got invited to join an online gallery based in Paris, Singulart. And that was like perfect timing going into the pandemic. So it's been a real joy working with them. I do have galleries all over the country. My gallery in Portland works a lot through kind of as a private dealer, so going into homes and businesses, and it's been really just such an amazing arc to be able to keep growing as an artist and keep learning as an artist, and there is more to come, I'm sure. Oh, and I wanted to say the piece that's in the show, the virtual show, is actually going to be in an exhibition, an actual real live exhibition. So if you're here in Portland, that show opens on November 1st and goes through to the end of the month. And it's at Kaplan Art Designs. So you can find information about that on my website, tamarenglish.com, or at kaplanartdesigns.com.
Great, thanks for sharing. Wonderful. Anne, why don't you go? Anne Haley. And Anne's with us on phone and not on video, so we won't get to see her today, but she will definitely share with us. Anne, why don't you talk a little bit about your career?
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. And as others have said, I have been honored to be included in the Alumni Gallery. It's probably the best one that I have been included in, and the work, all of the work is really top-notch. But I came to art rather late, so my arc of career is perhaps different from all others, because I spent 35 years running public libraries. And after I finished that commitment, knowing that I'd always been an art deep in my soul, I went back to school, starting at the community college, a class at a time, and then at Walla Walla University in College Place, which is next door to Walla Walla, for 4 years, and decided then that I wanted more studio training, and looked around and finally found PNCA. So it was really a pivot from a very successful long career to something that was absolutely brand new. And I basically worked my fool ass off trying to keep up with 20-year-olds, and had probably the best academic time of my life, working 24/7. I took a condo down in Vancouver so I could be close to campus, and I took the train in, and my husband gave me the time to finish my BFA. But after I finished PNCA, I couldn't quite leave the world of public policy making, so I took a job, or was asked to take a job as a commissioner on the Washington State Transportation Commission, which is totally left brain work, but I figure that left brain feeds right brain. And I did that for 5.5 years before retiring from that. So I have really been a printmaker, and came to that conclusion after I pulled out all of my work for the past 10 years to show some old friends. And lo and behold, even though I did my thesis in painting, my work of 10 years has really been printmaking, and that's where I feel to be most comfortable. So I have done all kinds of printmaking, starting with intaglio and multimedia layered work, reduction line of cut, and currently I'm working in lithograph and lithograph monotypes down at Crow Shadow Fine Art Studio, which is east of Pendleton.
Cool.
So that's my arc, but I'm kind of much newer to it. I'm probably the same age, but I'm much newer to this than many of the rest of you.
Thanks so much, Anne. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. What a great story. Travis, why don't you go next and tell us a little bit about your career?
Well, I grew up around art. My father was an artist, like working artist. He did screen printing and oil painting and like kind of a jack of all trades. And so I guess I was, you know, naturally I just had material things. And then I got into skateboarding really early too. And so I didn't really take my art seriously. I did it, you know, I would do a drawing here and a drawing there. And only when I was in my mid-20s did I really start painting and getting really serious about it. Like it was something that I found I was actually passionate about when I did my drawings. They were kind of not like doodles, but they weren't something that I was pouring my soul into. And I found when I was painting, it really mattered to me. Like I really had to think about what I was doing, and the process was something that I was really invested in. And then, and I grew up in Portland. And so I quit skateboarding when I was around 34 years old. And to fill that time, I mean, I was already like art painting more, but then I was really painting, and I had the opportunity to show my work at a couple places in Portland. And that's when I realized that I knew nothing about art. I knew nothing about showing my work. And so I took a portfolio down to PNCA. And so I started school when I was 35 at PNCA. And I was in a painting major. And yeah, that was, it was interesting. I really feel like, so I went to school for technical skills, to build my technical skills, but PNCA really got me thinking conceptually, which was amazing. And so I had a, you know, like learning how to think about art, and like it really was the foundation of what I'm doing now. And so anyway, PNCA. I was doing figurative work there, and got this amazing education in conceptual art. And I still needed technical skill, like I wanted a classical technical skill to inform my figures. And so I got accepted to the New York Academy of Art. And so I went directly from BFA to got my master's at the New York Academy of Art in New York City. And that's where I met my lovely wife, and here I am in New York. And so right now, it's been a few years since I graduated. It was a 2-year program, so I've been out for 5 years. And I've had studios around New York and showed my work at a couple galleries, but really, I'm just now kind of coming into my process, and I'm getting confident in my work to actually get out there and show my work. So it's been a long journey just to get to this point. And I think that's it.
Travis, thanks so much. What a great story.
Thank you.
Okay, Emma, your turn. Why don't you share with us?
Hi. Thank you, David, for facilitating this, and thanks everyone for being here. I'll echo everyone else when saying it's a really beautiful exhibition, and I'm honored to be a part of it and honored to be a part of this group of great creatives. So I just graduated with my MFA from PNCA last year, so my arc is still arcing. Let's see,
Everyone's arc is still arcing, actually.
That's true. Just feels like a very small arc, I guess. But I was raised in Portland, Oregon, and I guess I always kind of had art around me, but similar to Travis, I never really took it that seriously. It just kind of felt like something that came naturally, but was just a natural function. And so in my young adulthood, I spent a lot of time playing music and being a part of the like underground music scene in Portland. And through that, I was able to find a lot of different artists, especially printmakers. And so in 2010, I moved to New York with the idea that I would go to school, but not with a focus on where I would go to school. And through participating in music there and talking to other artists, I met some people who were in the printmaking program at Pratt Institute and applied and got in there and got my BFA in printmaking from Pratt. And I spent 5 years as a whole in New York and eventually decided to move back to Portland to kind of feel less like a small fish in a big pond, because I knew I definitely wanted to take art seriously and wanted to have a career within the arts, but I found it like extremely difficult to understand where to go or what to do in New York, because there is a vast amount of opportunity, but there's also so many people that are trying to do the same thing. And I also felt like I still had a lot of things to learn. I didn't feel like my craft was up to par yet. And within printmaking, there's so much to learn conceptually, historically, there's so much print theory, and I just felt like I needed more of that to guide me to cultivate my own artistic practice. So when I came back to to Portland, I applied for the MFA in Print Media program, which was pretty attractive to me, not only because the printmaking facilities they rivaled Pratt's. They were some of the best I've seen in the country. And also Matthew, the chair of the Print Media program, he got his MFA at Pratt. So we had that connection, and I knew that he had a very good education and understanding of print and could apply that to the curriculum for the MFA program. So I did that, and it was great. And I had a very excellent 2 years there, met some amazing printmakers and artists. And I ended up, after graduating, I worked as a print assistant there for Watershed, which is the publishing production, I guess, out of PNCA. And through that, I was able to work with a lot of different artists, including like Arnold Kemp and Josephine Taylor. And that kind of helped me not only brush up on my own technical skills, but it also assisted me in learning how to be not only a printmaker for my own artistic practice, but a printmaker for other people, which would help in my career to not only do my own works, but also work with other artists and help them to achieve their goals and help them conceptually. And so then the pandemic happened, and I kind of had been thinking about how I wanted to focus my career more in an educational sense, because I did have my MFA that allowed me to kind of like venture into the education field. Because ideally I would like my career to take me to a university and be able to be an educator and teach printmaking in a studio. And so I was applying to a lot of different jobs on the East Coast, thinking about going back to New York, but also feeling still intimidated by going back to New York. And I have a bunch of friends in Philadelphia, and I went and visited Philadelphia and also kind of like looked into the art scene there and looked into the printmaking scene there. And it's very, it's very grassroots, which I like. It reminds me a lot of Portland, but it still has, like, you know, such close access to New York and places like that. So it feels a lot more established, and it's not as young as Portland's art scene, I guess. So I moved to Philadelphia in March, and since then, now I am a keyholder resident at Second State Press here, and I have access to a studio, and I'm able to use all this downtime during the pandemic to make art. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Great. Wow. For a short arc, that's actually quite a journey that you've been on. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
You know, so the next question, and I know we could talk about these things forever, so I appreciate you guys keeping things as succinct as possible. This is a question really about content. I kind of think of artists and our uniqueness tied to sort of our own, each of us has our own sense of curiosity. And so I was wondering if you could talk about what sort of pushes your curiosity button. What are the things that inspire you? What's the kind of, what's backing your work up in terms of ideas and things that inspire you? And Emma, actually, why don't we start with you?
Cool. So I guess what inspires me is I like to observe, I'm a printmaker, but also a photographer. It's just something that kind of comes naturally to have a camera in hand and document everything that I do, because it allows me to access, or it allows to generate material for future projects. So I guess I'm very interested in observing my surroundings in a tangible reality. I kind of have a hard time pulling ideas out of my head and generating new things, as opposed to like reacting to, I guess I enjoy reacting to what I see as opposed to creating new things. It's kind of a weird way, I guess, of saying it, but hopefully that makes sense. But so materials and process are very important to me as a printmaker. I think there's a huge emphasis on material and a huge emphasis on process. And I feel like both the materials that I use and the process that I'm using, whether it be like screen printing or lithography or etching, all of those have to correlate with the concept. So they have to work together to embolden the concept. So I'm really interested in coming up with a concept, thinking through it, and then seeing how the materials I'm using and the process I'm using like strengthen that concept. And I guess I'm also interested in kind of deconstructing our linear ideas of time and memory. Yeah, that's succinct, I guess.
That's good. Great. Perfect. Tamara, why don't you go next?
The driving force of my work is, I would say, the awakening to the presence of the divine in everyday life. And that's the divine or the sacred that's beyond any name or tradition or particular path. It's the individual relationship that we may each have with the sacred of our understanding. And with that, what that means for our inner atmosphere, like what is the experience we're having in life, and then bringing that into action too. What gives meaning, what's the reason for being here, what I'm here to do, and how to serve. So it's been ongoing in my studio practice for many years and approaching it different ways. A lot of times forms found in nature drive my work. So that idea that there's this original creator that I get to copy from in nature. And also another big part of my work is the exploration of the quality of beauty. And that's just in making paintings that are beautiful and uplifting so that it offers the experience of upliftment to viewers. And it's also beauty that is about how we experience our inner landscapes. Can there be beauty in our thoughts and words and actions? And how to achieve that and what that means. And the so it's beauty that's universal. It's beauty that it's what nourishes our beings. And what's been fascinating and a curiosity and a drive for me is that to make this particular work and to be in this particular conversation, that needs to be in me too. So having a strong meditation practice has been instrumental in being able to show up to the studio and make the work that feels like the calling to make for me. I equate myself I feel similar to a scientist that goes into their lab and experiments and explores and investigates, or an athlete or a musician going to do scales, to do practice, so that there's always, there's both a strength and skill, and there's also an exploration and pushing into new territory.
Great. Tamara, thank you so much for sharing. Anne, why don't you answer that one? What are the things you're curious about?
Well, I'm really driven by a sense of place. And I've done photography for years and years, and in all of our overseas travel, and we explored the third world first before the first world. I always wanted to make sure in my photography that there was a sense of place, of where was this photograph taken and why was it taken. But sense of place to me can be realistic, what does this scene look like? Or it can be out of my memory of a place. It can be abstracted, but there always is an anchor to a place or a sense of place. A place can be rain, a summer shower on my patio, which was the inspiration for the print, which is in the alumni show. It can be shadows and light. It can be tree shadows on a sidewalk. It can be the divided slopes of the farmland around Walla Walla. And I moved here from the west side, the Tacoma, Seattle area. And I was struck when I moved here at the absence of trees and how naked the hills are. They're brutally honest and naked. But it's a whole different kind of beauty. It smells different, the sight is different, the light is different. And I've always been interested in patterns and in textures. And I think that driven my work and that's where I did my thesis, was exploring what a sense of place means and how it may look to a whole lot of different people.
Great, Anne. Thank you so much for sharing. Lisa, why don't you answer that question?
So in terms of inspiration and what makes me curious, gosh, a lot of things do. And throughout my career, I've really realized that I've had a fascination with archetypes. And that's led me actually, even previously to that, my mother was an astrologer, and I also practice astrology. So that's like a natural language for looking at archetypes. And I've been very fascinated with Jung's work and some of his ideas. And from that, I've really, throughout my life, studied a lot of, I've been part of an archetypal application group for the last 22 years. And I've also still am a student of astrology. aside from that too, one thing that has really been kind of a theme for me is looking at how one's imagination and one's mythic story can actually contribute to the collective and also to what the worldview is. And one particular person that I've studied with quite a bit is Richard Tarnas, who's written a book called The Passion of the Western Mind and Cosmos and Logos. And he's into archetypal astrology, which looks at the patterns of life and the cycles and the different themes that come into play as above, so below. So one of the things that I'm very particularly, we are like right now in a time that is so pivotal. And the show that I've got coming up, I'm calling Kairos, which actually makes reference to Jung used the term, and also it goes back to the ancient Greeks. It's a time that is not about quantity, it's about quality. It's a time where it's opportune and pregnant for change. And so part of me, I've been very fascinated even through art school with art history and how so often the images that people are making, like the images that show up in Unlimited right now, are really speaking a voice for the collective and are really contributing ideas that are helping transform the kairos of this moment, the time that is so immediately needing change. So I think that, that kind of thing of looking at worldview and looking at my own worldview, and I really appreciated what Tamara said about spirituality, because one of the things that I look to too is that our worldview really is influenced by what we consider divine. And one of the things with my work is that I consider nature to be divine, and that our relationship with nature needs to totally transform so that we are part of nature as opposed to objectifying it, turning it into an I thou rather than an I it. So those are the things that fire me up in a nutshell.
Great, thank you so much. Travis, why don't you try to answer that question about curiosity?
I've been thinking about, well, I've taken cues from Barth's Camera Lucida, and he, in his book, he talks about what an image wants, particularly what a photograph wants. And it is to be the object of desire. And paintings and visual art also, I believe, are what they want are to be desired. They want to be the focus of interest. And so what I do is I paint images of fleeting moments and like peripheral moments that would normally you wouldn't acknowledge them. I make those the center of my work. And so I take these images that we take for granted, we dismiss as part of our environment and or not really a part of our environment. And I make us see them, and I bring to attention the beauty of these images that I capture, hopefully. And so, yeah, and through that, a part of that is actually Paul Missel from PNCA, one of my painting instructors and thesis mentor, really hammered in the idea of the unguarded moment. And that's really stuck with me in my, while I work with images of figures generally, think of the unguarded moments. They have to be, I try to stay away from posed moments or monuments or anything that is like this hierarchy of imagery. I try to keep things banal oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, the unguarded moment. Yeah, so I guess I should share this piece if I can. So, are you seeing my image? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Looks good.
So this is kind of it's one of 3 paintings. The others are more in step with what I like the blurry pictures that I am doing. But I was really I think the water in this image was really striking, and it made me want to use this as part of my body of work. Anyway, the figures, though, they needed to be, or maybe this is basically, I'm just showing this as an example of the unguarded moment. It's she's unaware of being photographed. She's or any of the figures. Anyway, so that's something I'm thinking about. And let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, just that's about it, actually.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks, Travis. Everyone answered that one wonderfully. That was a great response from folks. Next quick question is really around obstacles and barriers, sort of on the negative side, but also you could respond by talking about opportunities, because actually a lot of barriers for artists, especially artists like barriers because that just kind of gives them another way to try to solve a problem. So you can talk about opportunities, barriers, around things that maybe keep you from expressing yourself fully, or anything that might get in the way, or again, might be an opportunity that allows you to express yourself even better. So Anne, why don't we start with you? This question about obstacles, barriers, and opportunities.
Well, I was thinking it on a couple of levels. One is the practical aspect of showing your work, which in Walla Walla up until last year was in coffee shops and wineries. And people aren't there necessarily to look at work. And during this pandemic, we all had work up in wineries and they were all closed. But there also has been a new opportunity that has come about here. A year ago, a half a dozen women created an LLC to start an art collective, and I've been invited to be an associate member of it. So there are 18 of us, and it's called the Combine Art Collective, and we together staff and run a gallery. Which means you have to be producing work all the time because shows change, and whatever is curated is changed out about once a quarter. So that's a new direction and a new way to show work, because I think my market is really a local market. I've had stuff in Seattle and it's not sold, and I haven't broken into Portland, so I'm mostly a local market. On another plane, one of the challenges being in a town where there really aren't a lot of printmakers, if any, is isolation. And I've been able to address that issue with a continuing relationship with Matthew Letzelter from PNCA, who was my thesis mentor. And we have continued to have conversations about work. And about twice a year, I will take work down to Portland, and we have an intense hour or two of critique. And he also answers a lot of my technical questions. A year ago, August, Matthew was in Anderson Ranch doing a litho workshop, and I was unable to go. So I set aside the 10 days that I would have committed to travel and being there, and did my own personal litho workshop here, figuring out how to do it in my own studio, which is a whole lot different than the PNCA studio, where there are texts and materials and people around and somebody to answer your questions. And he was available to me by text when I got really hung up. So those are two of the opportunities and challenges. And of course, the other challenges has been time with house, home, and husband. But during this COVID, other artists have said, oh, they're just so depressed and so bored. And I, for one, am making work like a mad woman, and grateful for large blocks of time.
Thanks so much, Anne. Great answer. Emma, why don't you go next? Talk about challenges and opportunities. Mute, yep.
There we go. I would say the biggest challenge as a printmaker is studio access. Access to presses, access to chemicals. There is printmaking that you can do in your own home, but as someone who works primarily with etching and screen printing, there can be a lot of hang-ups there. Luckily, I have access to a studio now, so that was a great opportunity and is a great opportunity. But I'll echo what Anne said in that I think that isolation is a huge obstacle. Usually being in a print studio, you're used to working alongside other printmakers. So there's usually just discussions that happen while you're working, and sometimes impromptu critiques can happen. Or technical questions can be answered, things like that. So I find, and because of COVID, we have limitations on how many people can be in the studio while we're working. So I do find that because of that, I definitely lack a lot of, or I miss a lot of the interactions that I have with other artists. They're pretty few and far between. But I think the flip side of that is, instead of looking to others to answer my questions, to help guide me through like a finished project or guide me through a concept, I am forced to kind of reckon with myself and tackle a problem myself and see it through to the end. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. If I do, I do, but it's not, I don't find myself kind of trying to ask others to help me along the way. You know, I'm stuck with a problem and have to tackle it. And I feel that then in the end, the reward is almost greater because it's something that you just kind of accomplished yourself. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Travis, why don't you go next? Talk about challenges or opportunities.
I have had, I did struggle for a long time. I made a lot of mistakes trying to figure out my process. And I, for a few years post graduate school, I took it upon myself to learn how to stretch linen, which is a really difficult process. And I wanted to stretch all of my own canvases. And that took up so much time. I was like more of a stretcher maker, I mean, it was like, it took so much time away from my art that I gave that up recently, a couple of years ago. And since I started getting them made to size, and since then I have a lot more time to work. So I resolved that. Really just right now, isolation is my friend, I have to say. I'm a studio painter, and I'm in the studio every day, and I'm not to be bothered. But no, it's yeah, I don't know. Right now, I'm just working. I'm not, I guess I don't have a lot of obstacles. I'm pretty much settled in to my process, and I'm just kind of working. I don't know. And the COVID actually, like I said, is not, I'm not relying on, I have a studio at home right now. So I actually did lose a studio in Dumbo, which is a tragedy, but I was able to break the lease and set up where I'm at now. So anyway.
Great, thanks. Lisa, why don't you go next? Talk about challenges or opportunities.
Well, I think that, maybe it's my background in art therapy, whatever, but I actually think that the biggest obstacle has always been kind of psychological for me, in terms of just maintaining a belief in myself as an artist. Even when, I get praise, there's a portion of me that really needs to believe in myself. So and I do well actually in isolation. Everyone's mentioned isolation. I actually do very well with that. But one of the things I think, in terms of what Travis was talking about, I'd like to share a work right now. A part of what I do often is I pick these, are you guys seeing my image now?
No.
No?
It says
We're seeing your Zoom image. If you want to go back and find another image to share.
Okay.
There we go. Yes.
Okay. So I pick these, unlike, it was relating a lot to what Travis said, in that I pick these obstacles that I make for myself in terms of wanting to play with the materials, really get into the materials. And in this case, the piece that's in the Unlimited is on the right here. The first piece that you see there is the actual fabric, raw silk, that I did the eco prints on. So I make these like elaborate, needing to make the eco print first, and then I needed to put it on cradle boards on top of like 3 layers of traditional gesso, and then I can start painting. So some part of me, actually, I think that I create sometimes obstacles within my work in order to, and it's almost like a psychological process, in that I feel as if then I'm really communing more with the work, and the work actually takes on a mind of its own. It's almost got like a certain autonomy about it. So in this case too, after I had done the eco print on the left, I actually did a very stiff image that was done within this kind of almost a yin yang sign. The figure head is in a yin yang sign, and it was very stiff and very Greek looking. And then all of the racial inequities and injustices were occurring, and George Floyd. And I had to destroy the image and put in an image that I found of an African-American woman. And part of it was just my own psychological process of having to respond to what was happening in the world for me. So, this shows 2 of the images, but on my virtual show, I have a little video clip that shows the trajectory of from the eco print done on raw silk to that, rather rigid image that was originally there, to this one that has turned into Sophia's Garden. And Sophia's Garden refers also to the wisdom of God, which is also the wisdom that's within matter. And so it also relates a lot to the fact that our culture has really disowned a lot about the feminine in both men and women. So that, I'll stop sharing now. I just wanted to get that in.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone, thinking about both obstacles and opportunities in the outside world and things we create ourselves just to make our work more authentic or more about who we are and what we're going through. Anyway, really interesting balance there between exterior and interior. My last question is really about your experience at PNCA.
David?
What's it? Tamara, I'm so sorry.
It's such a great question, and I'll keep
I'm
it
so
brief.
sorry.
That's okay. It's such a great question because, like you said, as artists, we choose this life of facing, at least the way that I approach my art is, here's an obstacle or problem to solve, and that's in the practice. And some days it feels like the paintings paint themselves, and other days it feels like there's just whatever's happening is not working. And so I just really find that such a wonderful part of being an artist, is that we develop this relationship with obstacles that is intentional and pretty powerful. It's so my focus with this question is on here and now, mostly, that we're in this time where things are really breaking down, like the old systems are crumbling. There's just such an upheaval and so much is going on so many levels that it's just this chaos time. And for me, really embracing where my hope is that things will go, that the possibilities of the kind of future that that we get to choose has been very much at the forefront of my awareness. And how much, and Lisa, you alluded to this, how much there can be serving this time and moving forward in this time through the images that we're bringing into the world and putting out into the world. And that art it's an essential business. It's essential even before it leaves the studio. It's so important right now, the work that we're doing. And the other thing I'll say is there have been some, I wouldn't call it obstacles, but just really being aware of being in a time of grieving, and that there's a lot going on where there's a lot of people that are suffering right now because of some of the things that have been happening in the world. And finding both the connection to the realness of that and also the gratitude that I have for getting to do this work and getting to have a home. And I mean, even some days it's like I have food on my table, just really such a clarity of gratitude for what is here and the possibilities of where things can go.
Great answer. Thanks, Tamara. Again, sorry, apologies for skipping you. Okay, so I want to get to our last question. We're going a little long here. I hope everybody can hang in there a little bit longer. But I want to just quickly think about maybe one thing about your experience at PNCA that has kind of stuck with you. How did that help maybe shape some things in your life or your career or your thinking? So you can answer it in lots of different ways, but just think about your time at PNCA and why you're a little different now than you were before. Emma, why don't you get us started?
I'd say one thing that definitely stuck with me through my time with PNCA was more of a confidence in myself. I guess I'll use this example to share my work, or this time to share my work. But for example, my thesis project, I decided to take on doing a 48 by 72 inch photogravure And that was a process that I had never done before, and is a very delicate process. There's a lot of things that can go wrong more than what can go right. And I think for me, it was something that I knew that I always really wanted to learn, but I was very intimidated by. But through the support of my mentor and the other people in my program, I had the confidence to execute this project and see it through, and was very happy with the end result. And so I think I've continued that into my studio practice now, in that I'm still challenged, but I'm not challenged so much that I don't see a project through to the end, or don't even start it because I feel like I can't accomplish it.
Great. Thanks so much. Tamara, why don't you go next?
One of my teachers when I was at PNCA, during a individual critique, was looking at my drawings, and he said, it's like, don't rest on your laurels. And that has stayed with me throughout my studio practice, because it's like what Emma was just saying about, like, here's this technique that's really difficult. It's like, but it's worth doing, and sticking to it to the end. So to not just sit on what I know I can do and say, this is my art and this is what I know to paint, here it is, putting out in the world. It's that continual growing as an artist, and going into new territory, and experimenting and learning and growing. And I do wish that that PNCA, that my teachers have been more adamant and forthright about continuing to learn and grow after school. That really, I wasn't finding that idea of having, like, really what a practice is, not just like, oh, I have a studio practice and I go and I do this thing where I paint. It's having a practice that's pushing and building skill. That's something that I've gone and developed now with mentors outside of school. So yeah, just noticing, like, wow, I wonder why we weren't really getting, at least in my experience in school, I wasn't getting that framework to leave school with. And it's been really important for my practice. And that kernel, that phrase, don't rest on your laurels, was helpful in getting me to that point.
Great, thanks. Anne, why don't you go next? Your time at PNCA.
To answer the question, how am I changed? How am I different? I would say,
what do you remember from your time at PNCA that's maybe helped shape where you are today?
are you speaking with me, Anne?
Yeah, Anne, yeah.
Okay. I would say my time at PNCA has given me permission. And it's permission to do art and permission to spend time in the studio. As far as discipline is concerned, what has stuck with me was, if you like one, do 20 more. And in technical and studio skills, I've learned subsequently that ideas drive medium. So more recently, I was sketching for what I had hoped to be small paintings, but the sketches really talked to me and said, print me, print me, print me. And so I did them as prints rather than paintings, so I'm much more sensitive to those images. Another set of inspirations that has stuck with me were out of books done by Catherine Brown from Crown Press. And in one of her books, she talks about various secrets, according to various people that she worked with in her fine art studio. And I have these secrets taped to the top of my laptop, and I read them every day, you know, like, don't take yourself lightly, and own it, and go into the ether and become skillful and have an idea and know what you don't want. And those secrets have stuck with me in terms of moving into new territory, trying new things, and having confidence with what I'm doing.
Great. Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing, Anne. Travis, why don't you go next? Talk about how PNCA might have impacted your life
Sure. Well, I suppose I'm really continuing now what I started in PNCA. They're in about my junior year, maybe. I was painting a large-scale nude, female nude, and at a certain degree of it started coming alive. And I was like, what am I doing? And I had to step back. And I think, all of the crits and the feedback and, just questioning to myself what I would, what is this image for? Why am I painting this? So I stopped and I took a step back and I started something else. And it was a picture. I started painting this picture of a couple of my friends that were kind of conjoined by, it was like a bad photograph, and they kind of blended together, and I thought that was interesting. And so I painted that, and that was where I started my journey, basically painting blurry or like bad photography. So yeah, I mean, I could be, without the crits at PNCA, I would, who knows what I would be painting right now. So yeah, I'm happy that I'm what I'm doing.
Thank you. Yeah. Lisa, why don't you respond to the question about PNCA and your time there?
Well, I had quite an arc of in and out in terms of being there. I would say that one of the things that even initially was that very much the instructors really emphasized the importance of really feeling the identity of being an artist, but then also too an element of community, and even finding community. And I feel like that is something that I've taken not only in the art world, but also just within the world of ideas and within life, that it's very important to find community to be able to share one's art ideas, just in the world in general. And I particularly remember actually one class that, because there was really strong emphasis when I was there on composition and experimenting with different materials. And I remember one, Lucinda Parker's composition class was particularly interesting because she really had us every week doing a full-fledged painting, small, and looking into new techniques, wet into wet, underpainting with, bright colors, overpainting with the duller colors. And that actually is something I feel like I have used in my own being an artist, is that I like to play with materials. And so basically, I think that is kind of something that I've taken a lot from just really getting to experiment with so many different, rich mediums in art school, that I continue to just want to find something else. What can I play with now? So I think that is a lot what I got from PNCA. It was definitely a great education.
Great, thanks. One thing I heard, I think, from everybody was sort of getting a sense of sort of personal courage, courage to express yourself, confidence in yourself, courage to try new things. It's an interesting word, courage. And, how would you even teach that? But anyway, very interesting. Well, we've gone over time a little bit here. I'd love to keep talking to all of you. You're all so interesting and have so many more stories that you could share. So I want to just thank you all for being here today and being willing to share. you know, the next, I hope the folks who've sat in on this get a chance to listen to the next couple sessions we have coming up. 10 more artists will be sharing their stories. And do check out the website to see the exhibition again. For those who haven't seen it, check it out. Really amazing work that alumni are doing right now. One more plug for the Laura Russo Distinguished Alumni Award. Go to the website. There's a chance to nominate someone. We'd love to grow that nominations list. We've got some great names there already, but I know there's lots of good people out there who are deserving. So do think about that. And I want to, thank all again the artists for being here and sharing. You've really made this not only a meaningful event for each other, but also for those who've been listening in, for the school and the broader art community. So I want to thank you all for being here today, and I wish you all well, and hopefully we'll all stay connected. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
To hear more about your work.
Thanks, Faith.
How do we get that later?